that you really liked about this course over the past 5 weeks? Did you like the progression of the way we put it together? We tried very hard to give you the progression that went from general basic information that we all needed to know or be reminded of, and move more into the different protocol types and how we can apply them to balance. And the one thing I think we said was that we were not going to do any of our usual typical balance activities that we do, because we all have a tendency to go back to the same old. And so we wanted some new ideas. And so, like Beth said, we would like to hear from you. What did you take away from this course, and what did you like from it? And I'll just remind you before, because my mind scatters sometimes, we have chats coming up, 30-minute chats, that those of you who participated in this, I believe you get to take those free, or you pay a very minimal amount. And then since we can't go to Chicago, Chicago has been divided up, and we have a lot of things there. And Ruth has been working overtime on looking, hopefully, towards doing symposium June 1 through 4. So let us know if you can come. We need to know that to know how to plan. So there are so many things coming up, and then hopefully we are going to be together soon. So let's start, and you can just raise your hand or unmute yourself and tell us what you thought of the past 5 Saturday mornings. And I congratulate all of you for giving your Saturday mornings to this. And then give us your takeaway or how we could improve. What would you?
Oh, Mary's speaking. Why did you do that?
You're on, Gail.
Oh, I see Jim.
You know,
Okay, everybody, just for a quick minute, please mute yourself, because if you can hear something in your background, so can we. But when you want to speak, remember to unmute and then mute again, please. And then we can all hear you.
I think that Julie, is she even here? Julie Baker, and sure, had to ask me a question about pelvic floor. And, oh, there you are. We have Camilla, she's the pro on pelvic floor. So you wanted to ask how pelvic floor played into, Julie, you better unmute yourself and ask.
Hi, I just meant it to be a general question about how to help them with cueing for proper engagement, how to tie it into core tightening. And I have a friend who's about to have a hysterectomy, and she's got a lot of issues there, so I'm thinking of her. But in general, for older women and for everyone, how do we build on the old-fashioned Kegel information?
I have, before Camilla starts, I want to tell you that when I first started, the way we were supposed to exhale was to pull our navel back to our spine. And now that shows that it's bad for your back, that we should only use the muscles of exhalation when we exhale. And that would feel like you're trying to press air up at the center of your rib cage. And to me, when you start to isolate those different things, you start to use everything correctly. But we have some people who exhale by actually slumping down, and others who will hunch forward. But no, posture should stay the same, and you should just feel those muscles during the exhalation move up the cylinder. and on the inhalation tongue behind your top front teeth for diaphragmatic breathing. Camilla, go.
Well, first, I think probably forget about Kegels because it's not the same as lifting the pelvic floor in response to the major diaphragm. And, you know, the pelvic floor does play a major role in balancing. And so femur grounding is something, a cue that I teach all my students, whether they're in the water or in the pool, basically thigh bones moving back into the hamstrings to create that stability, whether you're, you know, standing on 2 feet or 1 foot. So it's really, really important. And the pelvic floor supports, you know, the abs, which is really important. You've heard about the lots of ab work, you know, through this course as well. And it's important because, you know, there's a front fascial line in any case, which helps with either eliminating or holding stuff in. So everything is integrated. You can't sort of separate the body into sort of components, really. So we look at the whole of the body, and that's what you've been given a smattering of with all these different protocols of how to incorporate the whole body. But, you know, stress is a big factor when we're talking about balance issues, fear, and also pelvic floor issues as well. And it's about the posture. So learning how to stand upright on your own 2 feet, mountain pose, we call it in yoga, is really important. And then Mary was talking a little bit about, you know, that, you know, box, basically the square, the shoulders to the hips, and then also the diamond at the bottom of the body, the pelvic floor, have to be lined up. But if you want to learn a little bit more about pelvic floor, there's going to be a very exploratory, just a 1 hour, brief 1 hour. You can't really touch much in an hour, but a brief introduction to becoming a little bit more in tune with your pelvic floor. And a lot of people are dead from the navel down.
Forgot to mute myself. Sorry.
And I look, that's next week. So sign up for it.
And one thing about the pelvic floor, this is not just a woman's issue. This is also a men's issue.
So Connie's shaking her head. Go ahead, Connie.
Hi. Yeah, I put a little note in the chat there. I've worked with persistent pain patients with a number of pelvic floor pain specialists in my community. So I learned, as somebody working with people who had persistent pain, that I don't go near pelvic floor issues unless the physio gives me specific direction that they can do it. Because for some people, they may have chronic back pain, but it's actually coming from the pelvic floor. And if I get them in there trying to use pelvic floor activation as part of their postural routine, I can kick up or flare up their pain. So unless I'm given direction to do so by their presiding physio, I don't do it. But one of the really key things that I learned from one of these pelvic pain specialists was the way to engage transversus abdominis, which is different than I had learned it before. So to your point, Ruth, we're not pulling the navel to the spine. What she suggested is you think of the ASIS on the front of the pelvic girdle, and you try to pull the two ASIS together. And no, you can't physically do it. But if you sit in your chair and you try to do it right now, or you stand up and do it, you'll realize you get this very deep engagement of transverse muscles, and you don't tend to tip the pelvis one way or the other or restrict breathing. So when you think about pulling the belly wall in, the whole belly wall, you tend to restrict the diaphragm, and it's very hard to do diaphragmatic breathing. So we cue it as ASIS and pull in. Try to pull your two hip bones together. And it's actually quite effective once people learn how to do it. So that's my 2 cents.
Interesting, because one of the articles that I read a couple of years, well, several years ago about it, I tried to do this. They said, if you would just imagine that you're trying to press your hips together, the two hip bones together, but not allow any structural muscles to fire, you'll get it. I had to concentrate so hard and so long to try to do that. I think I was biting my tongue off because that's how I concentrate. But yes, so I like it that you're doing that And maybe I have to try it more.
Unless, of course, you are hypertonic anyway, in which case you have to go the other way, sit bones to the knees.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of, this is Julia. I like showing people how to find the transverse abdominis in the wall just by doing a simple weight. I have them put their hands right inside the inside of the ilium, the anterior ilium, and hold their fingers there, and weight shifting in the water in particular, when the water depth's about here, and you can feel it go on, off when you shift your weight. And that might be the first time these people ever even knew that muscle existed, you know, and that's just like the first thing I do for awareness of where it is. And then take it from there.
Okay, answer the phone.
And there are some good comments in the chat. Ruth, I don't know if you want to look at those comments, some of those comments in there in the chat and comment on them. There's a really nice one from Marguerite Rodriguez.
Oh, Maggie.
Maggie,
Well, Maggie, you can say it out loud.
Oh, and you know what? I'm going to say something to Maggie because she was talking about how she was lost with all the technical terms. Hang out with us for a while. When I first started, I was a swim instructor. I didn't know anything. I just knew I wanted to help people in the water. I was an arthritis foundation instructor, and I knew how good it was. So anyway, I kind of found ATRI by accident from talking to Sylvia in Florida. And my first few times, I was so lost with what's an ASIS, what's a transant, all that stuff. Hang out, man, I can talk it now. I can talk the talk, talk the walk, and I still am not a physical therapist. I'm a rec therapist. So hang out with us. You'll learn things and you'll get so addicted. It's cool.
And Maggie, I want to reply as well. I gave you a private message. If you have any questions on PEDS and CP, I put a direct message to you in the chat with my email. So you can always ask and contact me, no problem.
So Maggie, I have to ask, I think you're in a car. Are you in like Texas and don't have power and are in using your Wi-Fi in your car?
Can you unmute?
Oh, there she goes.
Okay, I just unmuted myself. No, luckily I do have power. I just have family at my house that doesn't have power or water. So in order to get away from that house, I'm in the car.
Well,
but
kudos to you.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out here with no water.
Yeah.
We don't have drinking water right now. We have to use bottled water, but luckily my house had power, so it was the hub for the whole family to go there.
where in Texas
Yeah.
are you, Maggie?
Sorry?
Where in Texas are you?
Oh, Dallas Fort Worth area.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
be safe.
But thank you all for the answers and the offer to help, and thank you for helping me not feel so lost at first. Seriously, the lingo that you guys are using, I'm sitting here with my eyes open going, what? But the first day was a little, as the weeks got better, as I kept, like she said, hanging out with y'all, I'm starting to understand a little more, and hopefully like our rec therapist, I didn't see her. What was her name?
Ellie.
Who, me?
Sally.
Sally? But Julia is also a rec therapist.
Yeah, I'm not a therapist. I just I just work at the YMCA, but I totally understand how you feel. But like Beth, for instance, gave me the best advice this week. That's that rent it or own it was fantastic. And I didn't realize that I'd been doing Burdenko in the deep water for the longest time and really working on that. Well, posture has always been a big thing that Ruth's been teaching for years. So I really started, like, everywhere in the YMCA pool area, it says rent it or own it. And, you know, posture and breathing, people probably have no idea where that came from, but I've been really pushing that issue for the last few weeks. And like, I've been getting a lot of feedback from that. So thank you for that.
Cool. Well, and Carrie had the story, if you were at all around for that first day when I showed that we should teach people how to fall, not just, well, and Carrie had the client who went out on the ice walking the dog, and he had already learned, she had already talked about it. And because he was on the ice, he had time to think, where most of us don't have time to think. But he was able to implement and saved himself from his wife's
falling.
Visit to the ER.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Janet has her hand raised. Janet?
Good morning, everybody. So happy to see everyone. I'm sorry I didn't get to all 5 Saturdays, but I will gladly look at those videos. I wanted to reiterate something that Beth said earlier about challenge. I think all too often people exercise and they're so far from that challenge point that, you know, we're not making progress the way we should because they're not really pushing themselves, or we're not having them push themselves. So yes, be successful. Unfortunately, sometimes with balance, you find that line by crossing the line, but hopefully we can get them right up to that line of their challenge. Otherwise, it makes it look like we don't really do much, and that's important.
Thank you.
And the same is true for any exercise, not just balance, that if you're not challenging them with that 3 sets of 10, which I absolutely hate, what's the point?
And I think that falling is maybe a start for being aware about the balance. It's like you say, if you challenge them, if we don't know how they fall or how they recover from a fall in their neurology patterns, we cannot challenge them. So it's like I said, I think it was 2 years ago, sometimes I push my people over in the pool and then they go like, hey, what? And then it gives me the information that I need, which I can work from, because I know, are they using ankle strategies? Are they using the hip? What do they do? And just building trust and then go from there. But if you only focus on doing something you cannot do really well, it's going to kill their motivation. And by making it more fun and putting it to the fall, it's like, hey, but you're in the water, don't worry. This is the way how to practice it. So it's challenging, but fun. We're in the pool anyway, so do it.
This is Linda, and one of the things I do with my residents, I'm not a therapist, I'm aquatic fitness specialist and personal trainer, but I love Ruth's horse racing from Fab Clams.
Oh, yes.
I get my residents on their noodles and they think I'm absolutely nuts, but we do galloping on the horse, and we duck for branches, and we do all kinds of stuff. And they think I'm absolutely crazy, but they don't realize that they're working so much on their core, and they stop themselves from falling because, God forbid, we get the hair or the hearing aids wet. So it's awesome. So
I have to say that I've used the horse for a long time. I love it, but I'm going to push for safety here.
Mm-hmm.
I have to do that because I've learned the hard way too. If you have a patient that you know, maybe you don't know, has a fear of the water,
right,
and you go to, they maybe want to readjust their noodle or something, and they fall off of it. The instinct that everyone has is to swim to the bottom of the pool. All they have to do is lift their head and
Mhm.
put your feet down. And we need to teach these skills so that they understand. I can tell you that I did have a lady that fell forward off her noodle and tried to swim to the bottom of the pool that was 3.5 feet deep.
Mm.
And trying to get her back up to her standing was difficult because she had greased her body so the chlorine wouldn't affect her. And so she was like a greased eel. And yes, I did get completely wet that day. She was totally wet, but she did not understand that all she had to do was lift her head. Luckily, this did not deter her, and she's come back for years. But I think we need to realize that we need to tell people, hey, if you happen to fall in the pool, your head is going to determine whether you come back up or not, or whether you turn over. So I'm just making a push for that, and that is all covered in REST.
Yeah, and that's one of my big things too, Mary, you know, being my swimming lesson background and all that. And so one of the things that lifeguard, one of the things that I do a lot of times when people are afraid of the water is I'll have them put their hands on my shoulders and then lift their feet up and kick. And then I go, okay, now stand up. And they automatically stand up. They put their feet down and lift their head. I'm like, see, you're only in 3.5 feet of water. You can stand. And once they realize that from any position, they can put their feet down and lift their head up, then they don't lose their fear of the water, but they're more comfortable doing either the exercise or the therapy or whatever it is. And so that's like the most important thing is getting them comfortable in the water before you do anything.
Right.
I like showing the Hallowick sit to stand type, around the transverse axis with everybody, whether they're just learning I Chi with the arm movements of floating and opening, and once they feel that they've got some kind of control, that I agree with Mary. People can really get hurt too, just trying to regain their balance. By doing a reflexive movement. I've seen people, think they're falling and they throw their head way back, and tweak, give themselves a little bit of a whiplash. And on land, we've all seen the shoulder injuries from people throwing their contralateral arm out to stabilize, but they do it so hard that they actually injure their arm. So I wish I got to see some of the footage on falls. I missed that Saturday, so I hope I can go back and watch some of that video of simulating falls. I was a professional faller for a long time as a skier and a diver, and that's all I did. I called it controlled falling. Yeah,
that's it. Well, we're doing falling again, a 2-hour session, I think next month, and Lynn is a PT. And Mary Labar are both teaching with me, and Katrine. So there'll be 4 of us teaching a 2-hour class, and now we're going to start to put it together and make it something.
It's May 8th.
May 8th? Okay, that's not quite next month, but
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to ask, because Ruth, you asked like I Chi Nei, it's not really common that you use it. But if you look at it from a perspective of swim safety, people that do not trust the water yet, that is why when I do the I Chi Ni most, because they don't have trust in the water, they don't have trust in their own balance. So you give them that trust first, then you transfer that trust to them, maybe not in person, but in their balance. You see, like, you can do this. It's two-handed first, it's one hand, it's rotation, from the beginning is standing on one leg very fast. These are just super exercise. And even the exercise that Linda Scott was just pointing out with the horse, you can do those with the hand positioning. They can grab you at first, but they can let go really easy. As soon as they trust you, they will start learning how to trust themselves.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting to hear from Heather. I wanted to hear what her takeaway was.
And we have Rodna with her hand raised.
Oh. Who's going to talk first?
Rodna?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. On the line of iChini too, also I use it a lot with my little guys because if I have a group that's really, really distracted, if we pair up, they turn their attention to each other and we can get a lot more focus, get a lot more controlled movements. And then once we are back in focus, we move back out into I Chi. And we do it on land because I don't have a pool shallow enough to do them in the pool. We start at 3 feet or 3.5 feet. So it's really a really nice tool to use on land as a warm up for the class for the day.
Awesome. That's great.
I think I'm going to add to what Rodna and Katrine just said that I totally agree with them. Right now, because most of us are in all these lockdowns, unless you live in Florida, and we can't do really hands-on. But remember, the healing power of touch is so powerful. And this is one thing that comes with I Chi Ni, is that power of touch. And that's why it's so important that sometimes we begin with that, because we not only gain their confidence, they gain confidence, and they feel so important. So, okay, let's go back to where we were going. Who was next?
Heather and then
Hi, I'm not much of a talker, sorry. And I'm from Nebraska, where it's been negative zeros and negative temperatures. So I'm very jealous of the Puerto Rico and Florida right now. June, right? Anyway, so I work with a lot of people who have neuropathy, traumatic brain injury, spinal cord injury, very heavy neuro. And so I guess what I've kind of been focusing on prior to this is helping people, especially when they're fearful or they have that decreased sensation, finding that comfort of kind of like an umpire pose, getting down, getting broad, and finding their stability with their core first. And the piece that I got from this that I was kind of my little mini aha was, okay, once they get that, now what? You know, you don't just go back into your, okay, now we're going to do our gait and our kicks and our whatever. And so I started working with a few patients on, okay, you're in that position, kind of like similar to the I Chi moves and whatnot, moving smooth transitions through, okay, you're starting to lose your balance. That's okay. Let yourself lose your balance, find that, and then move through it. And so I think kind of taking all the little pieces from the instructors has been great for helping me kind of direct that. And I have two patients in particular who that's really, really helped, who were originally either fearful because of falling, or they would get that I'm losing my balance and start going up rather than down into the water. And something about that motion of forcing themselves down into the water kind of turns on all the right muscles and gets them feeling better about not only the pool, but land. So
that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're with you. You should talk more. Bonnie.
There, I'll unmute. I just had two comments. For I Chi Ni, I do it as a recreational program, so we have quite a few people in the class. You want to be aware of who's working with whom. Don't put two unbalanced people together. I mean, you know, like, oh my God.
Mentally.
And second thing is for the noodles. When you have new noodles, they have a type of finish on them. If you go over, they stick to the inside of your thighs. So be aware of that. I have them take a little SOS pads and that, and we scrape them up a little bit so that they don't stick to your body.
Well, it sounds interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Those are good points, because normally when somebody like that falls, the piece of equipment stays with them.
Yep.
Which forces the head down more.
Yep.
I posted that 5-second clip of me falling backwards off the neck doodle pool seat. That is one thing that you have to figure out. Okay, when you've gone back, how are you going to get that pool seat out from between their legs? Then get them back to standing. So,
yeah, that's a good one.
You've got to think of these things. And I can tell you the best thing to do is just, you need to be close enough that you can fold that seat together and slip it down and behind. And then you help them back up to standing.
Thank you. Steph has written a lot, not said much. So unmute yourself, Steph, and tell us.
Well, the one sort of revelation for me was the fact that we started however many weeks ago it was. And by the way, I'm not looking forward to next Saturday because I shall miss it. But hey ho. But you started with falling. And when I was looking at your I Chi session and you were talking about rounding, stepping back, what were you doing? You were falling. So you brought the whole thing without actually thinking about it full circle.
Accident.
So, I think that would be called falling with grace if you were doing the movement in I Chi. Whereas in the beginning, when we were doing it, it wasn't very graceful. So, but I'm very much a balanced person, as you know, and I was very much influenced, as I'm a Burdenko groupie, and balance has always been, if you haven't got that, for me, it is the baseline. And I wish that we could sell it better, more as prehab, rather than waiting till somebody gets old and gets unbalanced. I wish we could make people train for balance as a positive thing, more like prehab. So that would be my way. But, it's been looking at how you saw balance in so many areas like this to make it into a whole thing was a revelation, actually. It was amazing.
To me too. Carl, do you have anything to comment on?
Well, I had a couple of questions, but it would be a little bit more specific. Doing back hab, I was wondering, we talked about having an instability and maybe using a noodle or something in one hand as you're walking forward and back. Do you ever use like maybe ankle floats or a belt or anything for the upward compression, maybe to progress in the back hab?
Okay, first of all, yes, I will give people 2 noodles because I don't want them to ever hold in front of themselves because it forward flexes them. Okay. So I will never let people use just one piece of flotation because it's like a walker. Maybe so 2 noodles. Dumbbells? And they have to hold it, yes, or dumbbells or easy grips or anything like that. Or even those rings that Julia was using. But they can't hold them up here. They have to have them off to the side. I like them to have a little enough buoyancy that they can actually use them reciprocally under the water, but they've still got them to help them. I sometimes will put a very light ankle weight on to help a person actually stabilize. If the water is deep and it's usually a woman who is voluptuous like I am, and we tend to float. I don't usually put buoyant ankle cuffs because it creates compression that radiates up through the kinetic chain. Right. And if they need a belt, I try to use something else because belts, I'll put it so that it forces them to be upright.
But what I was thinking is as they're walking, it would help compress the spine a little bit by giving it some upward push.
Julia uses a noodle. She'll have people Julia says that's the most comfortable for her to have a noodle like a horse ride noodle, where I find that terribly uncomfortable and it chafes my inner thighs.
Yeah, sometimes I'll sit on a either a Sprint belt or a scoodle, a square noodle, and getting that extra proprioception to the pelvic floor, ischial tuberosities. It takes pressure. I think it puts a little traction into the hips, but it gives you that upward pressure to hold yourself erect. You also think of the string on top, but that's challenging. A lot of people aren't going to want to straddle a piece of equipment.
I like that idea though.
Mm-hmm.
They have
Well, you're working on strengthening, and if you're compacting everything together from the bottom up, it helps. I would think it would help, especially strengthen the lumbar spine.
Yeah, for me, I really like it. It takes a lot of pressure off of my hips, my pelvis, but I'm still engaging my core and keeping alignment. A lot of times I'll start people at the wall, holding on wide arms on the wall with straddling the piece of equipment. Their toes are still touching the wall, so they have a little bit of a 4-point contact, so they can slowly disengage from the pool wall and get the benefits of it. And they can work a little bit on a pelvic tilt or side lunges, those sort of things before they go floating independently. Yeah.
Beth, you do a lot of spine lectures. Your opinion?
She's getting a drink of water.
It kind of depends, some people really need that decompression, and that's when we're in the deeper water. But I find that just like with PNF and our handholds and the Bible gauze, sometimes light pressure facilitates the movement and stability, and that complete open chain kind of free flowing is not, they can't get it. They can't get the stabilization, they can't fire. And so they just need a little of that input, sensory input, to allow them to gain that control. So sometimes that's the trick. The person that's really weak, that can't do it, give them a little resistance and it actually fires things where they can't get that motor control. Like we're going to talk in that functional class, using tubing not to create resistance, but actually to pull them further into their fault, to trigger a response so they know they have that fault, right? So that they know their knees are collapsing or whatever, and giving them that input that way instead of always using it as a strengthening tool, trying to get the stabilizers versus big things. So I think you have to go with what people feel. I like using a noodle on one side if they can hold it underneath, because it really does work that lateral trunk control, and you can see where they can control it or not. So usually it's easy grips instead of a noodle, just depending on their strength. But
I think you have to be careful with backs on that, because there are a lot of back conditions that you need to decompress to create space. There are space deficit issues. Like with scoliosis, we're always doing the exact non-surgical, okay? We're always doing a decompression type thing. So I think you have to be very careful. You can't assume with a back that it needs to be compressed or needs to be decompressed. What you need to do is start to, often you can ask the right questions of where do they feel the best? What makes it feel better versus what makes it feel worse? And they'll often tell you what they need.
I just wanted to add that last week I was noticing, before I got into the pool area, when they started getting in, they were using those noodles as kind of that forward thing. And I was explaining to them that if they use the noodles, they could not use them as that tool in front of them, that they had to pull it way up so that they were noticing their posture got better. Because if they didn't use it as a tool, then it was going to be a deficit and pulling those shoulders forward. So we practiced using that noodle in front only by pulling it back and having those shoulders go back. So I actually use that as a physical like, let's look at this because those shoulders cannot go forward. So that was just kind of a cue that I used for back hab last week. So
Carl, did you want to get us going on anything else?
Well, I was actually thinking more as a PTA, and I was going to ask Beth maybe specifically, when you're doing documentation, I know now everything to get reimbursed, you have to prove why you're doing what you're doing. And what do you guys look for in documentation from an assistant to help with reimbursement issues?
So your physical therapist that does the plan of care should be able to document the medical necessity, the utilizing the buoyancy, the drag force, and the hydrostatic pressure, how that applies to that patient. But also when you're working with them, you have to demonstrate skill. Aquatic therapy is therapeutic exercise, right? It isn't a magic different thing. It's just therapeutic exercise used in the pool. So you want to demonstrate skill. And so you want to make sure that you're commenting on how you've adjusted an exercise based on their response. How is their response before and after? What's their pain level outside the pool maybe? And then does it decrease in the pool? That demonstrates that the water was a necessary feature or therapeutic benefit. Does that make sense? So if they say they come in and they're like, oh, my back is an 8 out of 10, and then 10 minutes into their session with the pool, you're exercising and they're like, oh no, now it's a 4. So we can demonstrate that. But I think the big thing is you have to be there, not the pool. So if you document they walked in the water for 10 minutes, you could have walked away and you weren't necessary. So you have to make sure that you're saying, doing the walking, what did you change? How did you cue? What was the response? And then assessing, patient has decreased step length on the right, most likely due to tight hip flexors on the left. We stretched the left hip flexors, that improved it. So kind of putting just like you would on land, documenting. And don't forget, as any therapist, but especially PT assistants, are they progressing towards their goals? So what the goals that were written, how are they doing with that? So if they come in and they say, hey, I can stand now for 10 minutes, that's a progression maybe towards their goal, right? Their functional goal. So did that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah. I have to admit, I'm not actually working in aquatic therapy right now. I was working in a nursing home for the last 15 years. And because of COVID, I was laid off a few months back. So I'm going through all of this to try and build my repertoire to get back and do aquatic therapy again.
Great. So just remember, documentation is basically the same as a land exercise. You're just using what you know about the pool to do it.
Very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Rachel, do you have anything to say today?
Yes, I do want to, first I have to say that these last 5 weeks have been fabulous, fabulous. There's a lot of times when you've been closed in, and for me, I'm by myself, just this it's not socializing, but the communicating helps a great deal mentally. And so for that, I'm very grateful. But yes, some of review things. I'm not a PT as well. I just teach aquatic exercise, certified with AEA. But I use all the techniques that I have learned over the years, and I use them in an exercise program. I mean, so for me, it's been wonderful, and it's revolutionized some of the classes and things that I do because I can relate it that way. I do some private work for like getting ready for pre-surgery or things like that. But I was glad for the review that Julie gave with the rings today, because I do have a set of rings and I haven't been using them at all. So now I feel a little more comfortable going back to that again. So I thank you for that. The knowledge, the wealth of knowledge that came over this 5 weeks has been extraordinary. And the fact that Beth got up at probably 5 in the morning because she had to teach at 9 Eastern time. I'm very grateful for that.
Me too.
So I'm looking forward to some more of the Zoom classes. I'm still already signed up for Symposium, but wary. So we'll see what happens.
Good. Thanks, Rachel.
So I'm going to take the time, since I'm unmuted, to wish everyone great health and to stay healthy, wear a mask.
Thank you, Rachel. It's so good to see you. At least there's 3 of us for Symposium now.
Yeah. Naomi, I know you wanted to talk.
It's been wonderful. Fortunately, our pool has been opened up after 2 months of the lockdown. And I think the large part of it is we are associated with a hospital, and the pool is used for physical therapy. Balance has always been something that I've noticed with members in the pool. And it's funny because recently a young lady's been training to do some of the aquatic programs, and she says to me, "You're the only one that ever talks about the alignment, and you say multiple times during class, make sure you're breathing." So I know, because I've been in the pool and I've seen people doing PT, and I look at them and I can tell they're not breathing. And it's kind of like, one, you don't feel as much pain if you're breathing as you're moving. And 2, you need to breathe to get better. So it's been wonderful. Once again, I love in person, but I definitely can say it's good seeing people and hearing people. And I still love and do I Chi 3 times a week. And yeah, in the warm water, which is wonderful.
Thanks, Naomi.
Thank you.
Tanya? Is she there? No, she disappeared. Okay, then Mary Sue, did you want to say anything?
This has just been wonderful, perfect timing. When you sent the material, I'm affiliated. Our fitness club is with our local hospital here in South Bend, Beacon Medical Fitness, and we opened up in July, but it's great because the classes are so small. I think they really are sharing more. Well, I fell, or well, I did, and it was like when I read your description of these 5 Saturdays, I was like, this is perfect timing. And now you have really recharged me I got to do a lot of organization though to try to piece it all together. It's great. Beth and Hallowick and the unpredictable commands and the back hab. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But I forgot about Radna. She wanted to talk long ago.
Right.
Radna, do you want to jump in now?
Thank you. Yeah, not a problem. First of all, this is just for my little ADHD brain. This has been terrific to be able to sit for 3 hours, learn a lot, take it back to my pool, be able to research, add things. I think I've always loved the conferences. But I went home with so much information, I would sometimes lose track of what I needed to learn. This has been a perfect way to apply my learning. Also, I don't know if we talked about it or not, Katrine, your I Chi in 3 is the perfect answer for my little guys as far as learning I Chi. And it took me months to find out why it worked so effectively. And it's actually because the 3/4 time music is distractible to the brain. And I Chi is in 4/4 time, and that is so soothing and so rhythmical that the brain has a chance to wander if it wants to. So it's been an absolute wonderful thing with my little guys. And sometimes for me, when I go to the pool and I'm a bit distracted, I will use the I Chi 3 to actually do I Chi with. So if that's helpful, use it. but it's a really helpful tool. But this has been wonderful. It's been nice to be able to, I now work with adults as well as my peds population. So being able to transfer some of these thoughts to both ends of the aging spectrum, from the little guys to the big guys, has been extremely helpful. And I'm grateful to all of you.
Wow, thanks, Radna. Radna teaches IT for kids, so and several other programs for ATRI. So she knows a lot, but I would never have thought of that music engaging the brain like that. Thank you. I know Jim wanted to say something.
Yeah. One, I've tried to get back in the pool at the Y. They still have banned me from using the pool because I was using the lap lane because there wasn't enough space in the open swim because you have families in there. So they told me I can't use a lap lane to do exercise. I says, okay, whatever. But the other thing is this week, I was asked to invited into a research project to do balance for a geriatric population. I says, because I'm over 66 at the VA here in Boston. So I'm not exactly sure what all the guidelines are for it. All they said is I definitely fit in. So I asked them, I says, is that because of physical or is that my psychological profile? They said maybe a bit of both. So
Maybe it's just your age.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But outside of that, it has the 5 weeks. I wasn't here last week. We had some things we had to do, but it's been great. And Beth, that 10% didn't work, so I'm now down to 50%, and it's still not getting any better. Actually, my knee. I'm actually going back to see the surgeon that I have not seen yet since the surgery in July.
So you don't have range back, you mean?
I have full range. It feels like the whole joint, the prosthetic is just too big for the joint, for my leg inside. If I do a squat, it feels like the patella is going to come right out of the front of the knee.
But if you can bend your knee to like 120 degrees?
I get to about 112, 110, 112.
You need more motion.
Yeah. You have full extension, but flexion, I'm still working on that. But it's, yeah, I don't know. They say I'm doing great. I'm not happy with it. So
our next specialty certificate will be fixing Jim's knee.
I don't know if you all can do that. I think I have to do that on my own.
I want to, before we have to quit, I want to make sure you know that ATRI is on Facebook, and Beth volunteers to post things all the time, information, education, and her educational videos are the best. It's one exercise, that one where they had to walk holding the noodle behind them. I mean, some of those are just, I think that she drinks and then writes it all down and has her clients try it, but I don't know exactly. Anyway, we have a Facebook page that's quite busy, and I think it's a lot of fun. We also have an e-list, and this e-list, by the way, I've just paid for it again. And so I think we're on for at least another 3 weeks. So the Art of Balance e-list, we'll keep it for another 3 weeks. Know that the speakers, you see them here. They're just human beings wanting to help other people. They're like you. We're all the same. And so email addresses, email them, call them at midnight, no, okay, don't do that. But back and forth, if you want to connect with somebody else who it was from Philly and you thought, oh, wow, I have to find out who that person is and where they are, just let us know and we'll get you connected. or get on that Art of Balance e-list. And hopefully you liked my little ankles video clip on there this week. When I couldn't keep my balance, but it still lets you see how it works for people or challenges people. So I want you to know those things. And yes, I put something on the Art of Balance about the discount for the next specialty, but I don't remember anything about it. I did, just as you know, I turned 74 last week, and I'm not expected to remember anything. So Facebook, e-list, connect, email us. We all want to help. We all want to help each other. And some of your comments are, first of all, they're very heartwarming. Second of all, they're very educational. Connie was constantly putting things on the chat at every event. And I'd think, oh, that's right. Oh, yeah. So my brain was firing. Mary would have been proud of the way my brain was working these 5 Saturdays. So I just want to say thanks and give you that information before we have to run.
Okay, Steph posted something that she's not seeing the e-list or the balance e-list. Is Art of Balance at
Gaggle.
Gaggle.
GAGGLE.com.
Also for the next set of certificates, the spring thing. The spring thing, go to our regular e-list. I will repost the entire thing. As soon as we're done here, I'll put it up again on the regular e-list.
All right, so the Art of Balance e-list is Art of Balance, all one word, at Gaggle, GAGGLE.email. I gave you the wrong ending. Yes, get on. We'll stay in touch. This has been just glorious.
Can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
I just want to thank all of the speakers for all of the information. You have all been absolutely fantastic. Every week we finish one week and we think, how can they possibly improve? And every week it just keeps improving every week. So thank you to all of you, and a special thank you to all of the ATRI staff in the background. You know, Angie and Monica and MJ that are doing all the computer stuff in the background that we don't see them on screen or anything. So thank you to all of you for a fantastic 5-week program.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
Thanks,
Bob.
everybody.
as we're coming to the end, it's time for graduation. As Ruth has said, you will receive the certificate in the mail. And I've seen as many as 38 and 39 people on at one time, which is absolutely, I think, outstanding. And so we want to grow it. Our next goal, I think, should be 50. So let's keep it going. Tell all your buddies to give us a chance, come in and Zoom. It's a wonderful way to stay in contact, and it does give us that sense of belonging because we are family.
We sure are.
We are family. I got all my brothers, sisters, and me. We are
family.
So, Linda, do you have any announcements that we need to hear before we?
Only that if you notice that Monica isn't on this morning, she's busy. Her goats are having their kids this morning. So send her a note of congratulations on all of her new baby kids. So,
and Terry's birthday.
That's right. So it's been a great experience. I love Zooming because I just get so much education, and we have like 30 seconds to go. So anybody else, and then we're going to cut off.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, Twinnie.
Thank you.
See you, Twinnie.
Yeah. Nice to
Bye,
see
everybody.
Thank you. I love
Thanks.
you.
Mwah.
Thank you for staying with us.
Well done.
Thanks, everybody. It's been
Bye.
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 Bye.